Last year I test drove the all-new Jeep Grand Cherokee L, and for the most part I liked it apart from the powertrain. The V6 just felt too underpowered and it wasn't really that fuel efficient. Now though, the Jeep Grand Cherokee is available with the 4xe powertrain, a plug-in hybrid. So does this solve those two issues, power and fuel economy? Let's go for a drive and find out. Now before we get started, I just want to make it clear that the 4xe powertrain is only available on the two-row Grand Cherokee, which is what this one is. The other engine that's available for this particular version of the Grand Cherokee is the V6. If you want the V8, then you have to opt for the three-row version of the Grand Cherokee, but then it is not available with the 4xe powertrain. It would be nice if you can get all three engine options on both versions of the Grand Cherokee, but if I was a betting man, which I'm not, but if I was, I would say that the reason why they did that is because of the marketing department. I could be wrong, I could be right, I don't know. Anyway, let's get into this 4xe powertrain. At the heart of it is a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, and on its own it produces about 270 horsepower. But with the aid of the two electric motors, the total output is 375 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque. This very much feels like a big V8, although it doesn't sound like it, unfortunately. But it definitely has the power of a V8, and it can tow up to 6,000 pounds. When you put your foot down right away, the electric motor obviously kicks in first and it provides you instant torque. And then once the engine builds up its RPMs and the turbocharger spools up, then it provides the bulk of the power. However, you can just drive around town only on electricity. The Grand Cherokee 4xe has a claimed 42 kilometers of only electric driving. And that's pretty much what I've noticed during my time with this SUV. However, if you decide to use climate control, then it will take a pretty substantial chunk out of that driving range, maybe about 5 to 7 kilometers. This powertrain has 3 different drive modes. There's traditional hybrid, in which it will use primarily electricity first before switching over to the gas engine, unless you apply a moderate amount of throttle, in which case the engine will take over. There's electric only, which again is pretty self-explanatory. You just use straight up electricity. Unless you full throttle it, then the engine will kick in. And there's e-save, which has 2 subcategories. The first mode is battery save, in which case the charge of the battery gets held at whatever percentage it's at, and the car will be driving mostly on the engine. At slower speeds, like parking lot speeds, it'll use electricity to maneuver the car, but for the most part you will be driving on just the engine. And then the other mode is battery charge, which is again pretty self-explanatory. The engine will actually charge up the battery. However, if you leave it in that mode, then your fuel economy is going to take a nosedive, because not only are you asking the engine to provide movement for this big and heavy SUV, but you're also asking it to recharge the battery, and that's a lot of work. And speaking of fuel economy, I am currently averaging about 7.3 liters per 100 kilometers. Not too bad for something that weighs this much, and I'll admit it, it can definitely be better if I plugged it in more often during my time with this SUV. However, once the battery charge runs out and the engine has to turn on to, again, provide movement for this SUV, then it'll behave like a more traditional self-charging hybrid. So it'll be a mix of electricity and engine propulsion, mostly engine though. But I suspect that this engine isn't really that fuel efficient. On the trip computer, it actually tells me how much driving I've been doing with just the engine and with just electricity. So currently I've been driving 137 kilometers just on electricity and only about 47 kilometers on the engine. And yet I'm averaging 7.3 liters per 100 kilometers. That's a little bit high for the fuel economy. To recharge the battery from a wall outlet, it'll take approximately 12 hours. From a more common 7 kilowatt level 2 charger, it will take approximately 2 hours. The battery can also be recharged, slightly, from regenerative braking. Standard regen braking barely provides any electricity for the battery, but the max regen braking mode is quite a bit stronger. It is strong enough to be used almost like a one-pedal drive mode. It gradually and smoothly slows down the SUV to about 10 kilometers an hour, at which point you have to use the brake pedal to bring the Jeep to a complete stop. This latest generation of the Jeep Grand Cherokee is aiming to compete against the more luxury and premium focused brands. As such, the driving dynamics are more tuned for a comfortable drive rather than a sporty one. The SUV feels stable around corners, with the suspension providing good composure and body control. Steering is sharp but lacking in feel, which is fine for an SUV like this. This being a Jeep, it also has to be good off the beaten path. While this is not exactly a Jeep Wrangler, it can tackle some light off-roading duties. It has sand, snow, and rock off-road modes that alter the transmission shifts, throttle response, 4x4 system, air suspension, and traction and stability control programs. The 4xe is only available with 4x4, and this Trailhawk trim has 10.9 inches of maximum ground clearance with 24 inches of water fording capability. This Jeep Grand Cherokee comes equipped with air suspension, and it's, how can I put this? It's a little bit on the firm side, which is a little weird considering that last year when I drove the Grand Cherokee L, which also had air suspension, I found the ride to be pretty smooth. But this one, over certain bumps, you really feel those bumps. It's not as supple as some other luxury SUVs with air suspension that cost as much as this one does. Maybe this is just because of my imagination, or maybe because this is a more off-road focused version of the Grand Cherokee, but definitely test drive the Grand Cherokee 4xe for yourself and see how the ride feels to you. Again, to me, it's just a little bit on the firm side for the amount of money that you're paying. Having said that, when the tarmac turns to dirt, the suspension is quite good at making the Grand Cherokee 4xe glide over really rough dirt tracks. Additionally, the air suspension continues to keep the body composed and level when you're going deep on a forest service road. As for noises, well, when it's running on electricity, the only noise that you hear is just a little bit of tire noise. Once the engine turns on, you don't really hear it. It's actually pretty well muted. However, you will feel it turn on. Not because of the jolts when it actually turns on, but because of the vibrations. So you feel the engine's vibrations through the steering wheel, through the pedals, and through your bum in the seat. Inside the Jeep Grand Cherokee, it looks really nice and it's a nice place to be in, apart from the center console. And that's because of all the gloss black. This car has less than 4,000 kilometers, and yet I'm already seeing scratches right here on the center console, especially around the gear selector. Now, this is the reason why I always say in all of my videos that gloss black does not make for good trim, because after a few years, or in this case, less than 4,000 kilometers, scratches are going to be very visible. But all the other materials in this cabin are really nice to the touch. The leather on the steering wheel, the leather on the dashboard, the leather on the seats as well as the suede, and the leather on the door panels. It's really nice to the touch. Plus, I also like this trim that's on the door panels and along the dashboard. It's nicer looking than the gloss black. The only minor complaint that I have with the material feel has to do with this hard plastic that's on the center console. It's the kind that's very scratchy. But again, for the most part, it looks and feels pretty nice in here. The infotainment system is Uconnect 5 and it's displayed on a 10.25-inch screen. And this time around, I haven't had any issues with it. The reason why I say that is because if you watch my Jeep Grand Cherokee L review, I had a few connectivity issues between the infotainment system and my Android phone when using Android Auto, wireless Android Auto, I should say. But this time around, I haven't had any issues whatsoever. I guess over-the-air updates really do help out. The climate controls are all physical controls, and I like that very much. And you do have a few more toggle switches for the ride height and your drive modes right here on the center console. Additionally, this particular Jeep Grand Cherokee has a screen for the passenger. They can set navigation and then send over the directions over onto the main screen, or they can watch movies with the USB or HDMI inputs. However, it is not distracting for me as the driver because only the passenger can see it. In terms of space, in the Jeep Grand Cherokee, there is tons of it. I'm 6'4", and I can't complain for legroom, and I can't complain for headroom. Also, I sit pretty high up, so I have excellent visibility out the front, out the side, and even out the back. But if there are a few heads in the back, attached to torsos that is, this isn't a horror video or anything like that, then I can just flip up the mirror and I get an unobstructed view out the back. So all in all, in the front, really nice place to be in, plenty spacious, just this gloss black, it always gets to me. I hate it. As I mentioned earlier, the Grand Cherokee 4xe is only available as a two-row, at least for the time being. It might change in the future, I don't know. But what that means is there's plenty of space in these back seats. So my knees are just barely touching the back of the front seat behind my tall 6'4" driving position, but I don't feel squished in any way. I have plenty of space. Also, my feet have plenty of space, even though this seat is in its lowest position. However, I can't say the same for headroom. My hair is brushing up against the headliner. But I can recline the back seats. That way I'm a little bit more relaxed and my hair isn't touching the headliner. Also, these outer seats are heated on this particular trim. There are two air vents for you to direct the air. There's a plug down here and 4 USB ports, 2 USB-A's and 2 USB-C's. Also, there are sunshades, or peasant blockers as other people like to call them. And even though the leather is black, the headliner is black, the floor is black, it actually doesn't feel that claustrophobic in here, thanks to the giant panoramic sunroof. If it wasn't for that, then it would feel quite dark and dreary in the back seats. The trunk accommodates 1,067 liters of space behind the rear seats and 2,004 liters with the second row seats folded. They fold almost completely flat, and there's a little Jeep Easter egg in the very back window with the different generations of the Jeep Grand Cherokee. Though the standard 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee has a reasonable starting price of around $57,000 Canadian, this 4xe powertrain is a lot more expensive. The 2023 Grand Cherokee 4xe starts at $79,380 Canadian, including destination. The thing is, for us here in Canada, the dual pane sunroof and luxury tech group 2 package are automatically added on and cannot be removed from the base model. Without those two items, the price would be about $4,500 Canadian less. This Trailhawk 4xe trim came equipped to $85,475 Canadian, including destination. Although the price is in luxury SUV territory, it comes equipped like a luxury SUV. It has heated and ventilated front seats, heated rear seats, heated steering wheel, surround view cameras, front and rear parking sensors, a rear camera mirror, wireless phone charging pad, programmable power liftgate, and dual zone automatic climate control. One really cool feature that I want to mention is the night vision camera, although it's more of a heat vision camera because that's what it actually detects. Obviously you can use it at night, but you can also use it during the day. The camera is mounted in the grille, and it's actually not that distracting to use when you're just driving around. It'll highlight the hottest spots of another car or a person, like their hands or face, and it'll also highlight in big yellow squares, or rectangles I should say, any animals or pedestrians that may walk in front of the car or that are just to the side of the car. There aren't too many safety and driver aids on the Jeep Grand Cherokee that are not standard already. The usual features such as automatic emergency braking, lane departure with lane keep, blind spot sensors, rear parking sensors with automatic braking, rear cross traffic alert, and rear seat reminder are all standard. Some of the options include front cross traffic alert, front parking sensors, front off-road camera, and active driving assist, which integrates the adaptive cruise control with the lane centering to make highway driving a little bit more comfortable. So this Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe has me feeling a little bit conflicted. On one hand, I am a huge fan of plug-in hybrid powertrains. I think that they are far better for mass adoption than full electric vehicles. Not only do you not really need such a big infrastructure to recharge PHEVs, but also they are just a little bit more environmentally friendly. For the amount of resources it takes to create just one full electric battery, you can probably make 3 of these, and maybe double that, 6 or 7 traditional hybrids. But that's a story for another time. I also really like the interior of this Jeep Grand Cherokee. I like the space, most of the materials, not the gloss black. And I think Jeep did a great job with this new generation of the Grand Cherokee. But on the other hand, this has a starting price of $80,000 Canadian, and it doesn't quite feel like as though it's worth $80,000. The engine just has a few too many vibrations. It doesn't feel quite as well refined, and the ride for air suspension is not quite as supple as some of its competitors in the same price range, like the Volvo XC60 or the 3-row version, the XC90, or the BMW X545e. So that's why it's leaving me a little bit conflicted. On one hand, I really like it, but on the other hand, it could use more refinement. So Jeep can either spend more time refining the engine and make the ride just a little bit more soft, or they can lower the price of this by, say, maybe $10,000, $15,000. That would make it a bargain. But anyway, if you'd like to know more about this Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe, I wrote a more detailed review of it over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up there. And as always, I will see you in the next car or truck or most likely another SUV. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you next time.